Mike Moore from TCT 2025 here in San Francisco. I'm here with my good friend and CEO of CorFlow, Paul Mead. Paul, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So we both spent some time at Medtronic earlier on in our careers, but for the last 3 years you've been the CEO and at the helm of CorFlow. Tell us a little bit about what drew you to that opportunity.
So yeah, Mike, it's a great question. I think a lot of my peers could relate to the thought process behind it. There's a trap you can fall into where you say it's better at a corporate or Medtronic or it's better at the startup. The answer is they're both better. And I think they're just better at different things.
Fair enough.
And my Medtronic time, it was a school of excellence for me. And I think it's not just Medtronic, but you could say the same of many of the big corporate companies behind us. You learn what the best in class looks like, but there are some things they don't do better than startups. So my time there, did I have the chance to really move with agility and take risk on that? Maybe the life cycle is 5 to 10 years. I've been at my role 3 years now, but it's going to go a long way. It's pretty rare at a big corporate now that you see bench to bedside, and that bed is made all in-house, right? I mean, so many things are acquired and there's build to buy. So yeah, I'm not going to say one is better, but I would say for me, what drove me was, hey, look, I have the chance to move really fast on a huge unmet need at a pace, yeah, Medtronic leaders, I think, would acknowledge, hey, it's better in a startup. And we're going to keep an eye on you, just like a lot of startups here. Yeah, so it's not a case of one being better than the other. But then specific to CorFlow, it happened that I worked with a physician, Dr. Martin Rothman, and he was a medical officer at Medtronic. And he was a practicing cardiologist at London Chest for decades. He saw in his own STEMI care a boatload of the patients he treated with a perfect epicardial outcome. Florals looked great. You hug the family, you say it's all fine. The outcomes were still poor. So at Medtronic, we were tracking the space of microvascular obstruction. So I knew about it while I was there. He left Medtronic, he founded this company. One day he gives me the phone call, hey, look, we're looking for a new CEO and a chance to make such an impact where a massive unmet need, we can get into that later. Why wouldn't I do it?
Yeah. So this microvascular obstruction issue, this has been an unmet need in interventional cardiology for a while now.
Yeah.
But we've seen limited investment from industry in this space, and specifically on behalf of the strategics. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, it's also a great question, and quite honestly, when I really dug into it, I was perplexed and almost shocked. Why isn't everybody invested in this? And the reason I say that, it does go back decades. I mean, we're talking, it was, let's say, a big turning point would be the early 1970s even, when Eugene Braunwald, who's considered the godfather of modern cardiology, wrote a lot of the textbooks that the cardiologists here studied from. He showed that having a heart attack was not a singular event that you just manage around. It was a fluid, dynamic event that you can do something about. So you could intervene, and there were ways to change the outcome of those patients, almost real time. And then he followed with ways of grading the myocardial perfusion, and that led to work by people like Michael Gibson, who have ways that then you can take slice by slice frame count and say, there's a huge difference in patients with a really poor microvascular flow versus those that have a very fluid one, irrespective, completely independent of the major arteries. So yeah, to come back to your question, it goes back a very long way. And I think all the academics have known this literally for decades. Mm-hmm. The average cardiologist is going to say, absolutely, this is driving outcomes. But your question is, why haven't the big corporates invested? I think this field got into a chicken and egg situation. And where, the bottom line is, if you're a corporate, you have to be able to make money. And there's an argument that says, well, if you can't diagnose it, how can you treat it? And why would you focus on a treatment when you're not sure you can diagnose it? And you just got into this gridlock. And so it needs a breakthrough to unlock at least one of those in a very good way.
Right.
And then I would argue, at one point, because it's such a large market, how can all of them not be in it eventually? And I'm not saying that to just, float the prospects of CorFlow, but I think most of the big corporates here are going to tell you the same thing if you ask them. Eventually we will be in it. It's just a matter of when and how.
Right. Yeah, it's very quickly and very quietly become one of the hottest spaces in interventional cardiology. Yeah. Also one of the most controversial, which we'll get into in a little bit. But tell us a little bit about what you're building. What's the problem you're trying to solve? Are you going after the diagnostic side? Are you going after the therapeutic side, or both?
Yeah. So what a lot of these pioneers showed, and you can read the literature on it, is that to really do this effectively in the major indication we go after first, which is the STEMI patient. So these are heart attack patients where time is tissue. And what we learned from people like Braunwald or Mike Gibson or even researchers like Waha later in Germany, they showed that if you are going to make a difference in MVO, you need to diagnose it and treat it basically at the same time. In all due respect, within minutes. So our solution aims at just that. You've got to diagnose you have a microvascular problem, but because time is tissue, and all that myocardium is starving of oxygen, and it's going to die if you don't do something fast, you have to deliver a therapeutic agent, or even if it's an external therapy that's not delivered via a catheter, which our solution does, they've got to be combined. So what our solution is, we have a console. It's touchscreen operated. It's state-of-the-art electronics, software, user interface connected to a proprietary catheter. And that catheter has the ability to occlude the vessel that's right at the spot where you had made that epicardial treatment. So presumably there's a drug-eluting stent there. You're inside that drug-eluting stent. You then occlude the vessel. We infuse a saline-like solution called Ringer's lactate with a pressure sensor distal to that point. So this is your setup. Now you start to infuse this Ringer's lactate and you measure a back pressure resistance. Since you created the flow and you're sensing the pressure, you can then tell how much resistance is downstream and then eventually even to the degree how much is blocked. So I'm probably, my engineers would say, hey, you're oversimplifying something way more complicated than this.
Right.
But in effect, you get a diagnostic in about 1 minute, and it will tell you, do you have a problem or not? That same catheter, that same system switches to therapeutic mode. So on the touchscreen, you're going to say, I want to deliver a 2B3 inhibitor, and it's connected on drip bag, 3 cycles, 1 minute each. This is the dosing, go. It will then re-inflate that balloon and infuse that drug distally, locally at a really high concentration. Our solution we don't make the drug. We're agnostic to which drug it is. We aim to let the physician choose that, but it is definitively a drug delivery, therefore therapeutic solution as well.
And are you guys the only one out there that's working on both the diagnostic and the therapeutic side, or is there a couple others out there that are tackling the same?
Good question, Mike. So as I've been in the startup world, the best answer is I don't know.
Yeah.
To my knowledge, no. There might be a stealth effort out there that I haven't come across, but we're a tight community in the startup world, and I haven't heard of anyone that can do both.
I haven't either.
You haven't either,
yeah.
But there are a lot of plays on one side or the other. Mm-hmm. And you take the therapeutic side, we deliver drug, and we're making a bet that goes back to the foundational cardiology drugs, 2B3 inhibitors, vasodilators, lytics, and there's next generations of those coming, that those will be most effective. But I won't discount or disparage in any way that it might be that unloading the LV, the research that companies like J&J with Impella are doing, there's an argument that also might address microvasculature, or what Zoll does with Therox, it affects STEMI. You could argue that affects microvasculature. Or there may be a systemic solution that also addresses this issue. So anything against those solutions, but they're not diagnosing. So all of their trials, they're going to have to take somehow all comers,
right,
or use a diagnostic that's, for better or worse, proven to be false positive or false negative a lot of the time. So people are hesitant to use them.
So the therapeutic side seems like it would be the big bet.
Yeah.
That would seem like that's got the home run potential. Is that the bet you guys are making, or what is the bet you're making?
Yeah, no, it is also a great question. In the space of the startup world and investment, this is a little bit like a tastes great and less filling argument,
Right.
where some people say, hey, diagnostic is plenty. I mean, look at a HeartFlow or CathWorks or Clearly or a good...
Let me challenge you
Yeah,
there.
go,
Let me challenge
go.
you there.
Yeah,
Let's take that
Yeah.
and take it one step further. So if, let's say you do have the diagnostic,
yeah,
a naysayer could say, anytime you can diagnose high risk STEMI patients, that's not a bad thing, certainly.
Yeah.
But a naysayer could say, now Paul, what good is it to diagnose it if you don't know how to treat it once you, how would you counter that?
First, I'd have to collect myself because the question frustrates me,
Right.
and I hear it a lot, sometimes even from physicians, and not that I always answer this way, but really my thought process on this, imagine if the history of medicine always had that answer. So you're going to say, hey, look, why diagnose cancer if you can't do anything about it? Why diagnose resistant hypertension if you can't do anything about it? Let's just stop there. It's almost a ridiculous question when I really think about, honestly, a question I receive a lot. And in our case, there's a lot of KOLs out there who are going to tell you, look, if you haven't proven as CorFlow that your therapy works with this, who cares? There's so much you can get out of that diagnostic to help practice now. So, and just to step back on the unmet need, we're talking half of all STEMI patients, at least, maybe 60% have MVO, and they do worse. Some research says about 10 times worse. It's an off-the-chart magnitude. So if you already know that, and you know that immediately, how could you possibly not treat that patient different? And how could you not use the resources in your hospital different? So one of our PIs, Dr. Tim Henry, for our IDE pivotal trial, he contends that we need to get these MVO negative patients out of the hospital. We need the beds and we need the resources for something else. And look at their outcomes. They're fantastic.
Right.
We're wasting our time with ICU care and overnights and all the same monitoring as the MVO positive ones. Hold on those. They need extra days, extra care, very likely to get heart failure. You're going to have them come back more frequently. So I could go in a
Here
lot
in the
of
United
directions.
States, the readmissions and all that.
It matters.
Yeah, it matters.
So,
no, I get it.
Yeah.
So in STEMI trials in general with drugs,
Yeah.
devices, there's a bit of a graveyard of
Yeah.
failed trials out there. What, you guys are well into your clinical trial process. What makes you believe that this is going to turn out differently?
Yeah, so, well, if I just focus that on the diagnostic space, could argue, yes, the bet is less of a risky one. And there aren't such a graveyard of failures in the diagnostic side. I think many companies are advancing here, whether it's with AI or slightly invasive tools. But on the therapeutic side, you're spot on. There's a lot of drugs that were used in the majority of patients 15 and 20 years ago. Then a few trials come out and show, well, they actually caused a lot of bleeding risk. Mm-hmm. And the physicians were trained to think, don't touch them. They heard the stories, and that's what creates this aura of, yeah, there's a graveyard out there. And on the therapy side, some of the technologies that I've talked about that are used today, whether it's Zoll or Impella or others, they're not failures by any means, but they haven't shown the breakthrough that it does the huge difference that they might be able to do. So what would be different for us? I think it is this combination of breaking that chicken and the egg cycle. Mm-hmm. So if you can really identify who's going to be affected by the right drug treatment, you've already dramatically increased your chances of success with any therapy targeting it. It's just logical. But then the second piece, I think there is a false perception about failure in our space with these drugs. So an example being, when you talk about thrombolytics, for example, if you just randomly grabbed a cardiologist and said, hey, if you saw no reflow situation, like first drug comes to mind, like what are you gonna do? TPA, I'm gonna use that. And then I go and ask, well, should we study that? Should we use that? Oh, no, it showed a high bleeding risk. You zoom in on where's that bleeding risk in those studies. We're in an old era when most of the studies were done, and you have femoral bleeds, you don't have the right closure devices. Now we're radial. Now there's a lot of things on patient care. You don't get those bleeds, but they won't redo the trial. The money was spent, perception's there, so.
Right.
I could go on, but that's the bottom line.
It's interesting, it's certainly interesting. What you guys are embarking on is a bold endeavor. You're basically taking on 2 landmark clinical trials at the same time. That's a big deal for a big company, but certainly for a small startup. What lessons have you learned?
Yeah, no, that is also a great question. And we're early on the journey. Like I said, I've been here a few years, but we have many years to go. And some of the lessons learned, I would start with, if you're going to take on a journey like this, the first thing is people. Because you can have a magical technology and you kill it with not having the right humility about its limits, about not taking the right scientific steps to ensure you're going to safely bring this to the market in the right way. Or maybe your clinical trial, if you sign up with the wrong PIs, they're going to cut corners and you could jeopardize things in another way. And quite frankly, people comes down to who you hire as well, where working with people like yourself, I can say it makes a really big difference that you trust who's on your team, because in a startup, this is one of the lessons learned, you cannot have a weak link. And there's a lot of weak links. You might not even notice at a big company, because if someone else fills in for it, we have no margin for error.
Nowhere to hide.
No, that's it. So everybody has to be strong, from your team to the PIs, and I would extend that even to the investor group, which is another lesson learned. They have to go on the journey with you. We have an awesome syndicate of VCs who get the issue. They're partners, they're friends. I would run through a wall for them.
They're impassioned about the initiative.
They're deep in the science. That'd be another one. But the other part, just on this bet of taking 2 trials, it really is a lot, right? And we might be starting enrollment momentarily here on both of these 2 continents, 9 countries. So with that effort, you have to believe, and our investors do as well, this is a 1 + 1 = 3 scenario. And that makes all of it worth it, because these trials, one's focusing on the diagnostic, one's focusing on the therapeutic. They come together for the patient. And when we eventually hit the market, that whole chicken and the egg thing gets answered by both trials.
It's a great answer.
So,
What's your Valhalla here? What's your vision for all of this?
Yeah.
Fast forward 5 years. What do you hope you've accomplished?
Yeah, I think it's not to say it's vindicating my thoughts, but what I feel we're doing is vindicating all of the luminaries in this field who said that this should be what makes the outcome different.
Gave a voice.
They gave a voice and they said, don't give up on the microvasculature. It's the majority of the problem. It's not part of the problem. It's half of every patient who enters a cath lab around the world. So name a single technology in this entire arena that can say that they're going after half of every patient that goes into the lab. So my vision, therefore, would be, we vindicated all those visionaries who said, that's where the real unmet needs are. That's what's driving angina in stable patients, why they return. That's what's causing the heart failure and the STEMI patients and how you can prevent that, and mortality. So if we vindicate them, that means in 5 years, if you or I suddenly have a heart attack, and it's possible for healthy people our age, that there's somebody there who's going to diagnose microvascular right away and do something about it. And we're standard of care, and to me, that's the win.
Yeah. Doctors often talk about one-to-one patient to physician. This literally could be 1 to millions.
Yes.
And that's a neat
I totally agree, Mike.
Yeah. Well, we love what you're building. I'm very proud of you and look forward to following all your continued success.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.
That's it for TCT 2025. Signing off.